Snortius the Great, Snortius the Unburnable, the Uncrumpable, Snortius the First, the great snot boss of Snortopia, ruling from his seat of power in Snortantinople, prepared for battle. By the blessings of Mork, he had conceived of a most cunning and devious plan. Snortius knew that the Humies got all of their gubbins from trucks, so he forced one of the captured Humies to drive one of the looted trucks from Megahumiopolis. The Furious hid in the footwell next to the pedals with a shooter trained on the Humie just in case he tried to run away or betray the Greenskins. Hidden in the truck trailer was Snortius along with 3 of his orcs, Orcamungus, the Big Chef, and Dr. Crumplestein, as well as the Grots, Redshirt 5, Tree Climber, Double D, Snotbow, and Steve. They also grabbed an assortment of snotlings and squigs to pad out their numbers and provide some battle fodder, as well as a few snacks. Down the road they went, to the Humie town known as Easton, which was in the east, which made it very easy to know which direction they were supposed to be going. All the way down the dusty roads, there were no other Humie trucks, no other signs of life, nothing but open road. Eventually, a town began to come into view in the distance. It was not so different from Megahumiopolis. Another great town with a tall electrified fence to keep away the dangerous creatures of the planet. But unlike Megahumiopolis, this town had one large watchtower in the center, instead of numerous smaller towers around the fence. As the band approached the town, Snortius bowed his head in prayer for the battle that was about to commence. "There, Gork and Mork. How are you? I am fine. Help me kill these Humies and make my boys proper and not cowardly gets. The end." Snortius finished his prayer and suddenly tensed as he heard the squeak and hiss of the truck's brakes. They were stopping. The Humie would need to talk his way in. In the cab of the truck, the Furious kept his shooter trained on the Humie. "Do your Humie talking stuff and get us in there. If you don't, or you try to do something kiddish, I'll blow your head off." The Humie swallowed nervously as the gate guard approached his booth. "Hey friend, what you got for us today?"
Not too much. Fertilizer, pesticide, fungicide."
The Furious jabbed his shin with the shooter.
I'm sorry. No fungicide. No fungicide. But I got plenty of parts and promethium.
That sounds good. I'll get the gate open for you. You want to head over to the warehouse just left of the gate, and we'll unload all your stuff for sale, and we'll get you sorted out.
Yeah. Sounds good.
With that, the mighty gates of Easton opened wide for Snortius and his Trojan truck. Around they went, the truck pulling into the allotted parking space. When the heavy door in the rear opened, well, let's just say those Humies didn't know what hit them. Snortius's chain chopper roared to life as the 2 unfortunate Humies came face to face with a literal truckload of greenskins. With a fierce war cry, the snot boss plunged his weapon into the nearest worker, brutally and messily dispatching him as he sliced him from his shoulder deep into his torso. With a kick, Snortius dislodged the corpse from the end of his blade. The Big Chef leapt out with him, swinging an enormous cleaver and carrying a cookpot under his other arm. "Fresh meat for the pot." The Humy in front of him must have had the reflexes of a scorpion squig, because he managed to duck the vicious swing before trying to scramble away from the truck.
Greyskins! Greyskins! We're under attack!
He reached for a big red button by the gate, setting off a blaring alarm and closing the gate behind the orcs so they couldn't escape. But Snortius's boys had no intention of escape. They were eager for a fight. Double D, an aspiring weird grot, got his first taste of real war energy as the mob poured out. He could feel the power of Gork and Mork as the mass of green poured out from the back of the truck. Wah! Dozens of snotlings felt the rush of the weird boy power course through them as they whipped themselves into a berserk fury and threw themselves at the Humy who hit the alarm, their teeth gnashing as they savagely foamed at the mouth. Unfortunately for them, they were less than half a meter tall, and the Humy was able to dodge away from them, giving a few a solid boot to the face, sending them flying away. Besides the Humy that hit the alarm, there was only one other Humy visible, the one who had been at the booth when they first arrived. He was still standing there in shock as the greenskins began their rampage. Orcamungus charged the unfortunate man. He wielded a kind of ball and chain, except that it was less of a ball and more of an enormous smashed engine block that the Furious couldn't get working. So he swung the enormous hunk of metal above his head and hurled it at the booth beside the gate. The Humy ducked down as low as he could as the weapon smashed through the glass of the booth. Unfortunately for the orc, he did not find his mark. The big chef, however, was having a bit more luck. After the Humy's initial lucky dodge, the big chef barreled after him, swinging his cleaver wildly.
Come back here, Humy! I just want to chop you up and eat you!
The alarm Humy tried to anticipate the blow this time, but the chef was too fast and too strong. The Humy ducked, but he didn't duck low enough, as the big chef cleanly severed his head from his shoulders and neatly caught it in his pot.
Ah, Humy had stew tonight!
Snortius grinned at the thought of eating fresh Humy when the battle was over. But there was still much more to do. With Orcamungus smashing into the booth and no other Humys in sight, Snortius revved his chain chopper and attempted to get at the Humy hiding in the bottom of the booth. But due to Snortius's size and the angle of attack, he couldn't get his blades to reach the cowering Humy. So instead he simply sliced the top off the booth and tossed the twisted metal to the side. Eager to get in on the action, Dr. Crumplestein leapt forward, wielding his Operation Buzzer, a circular saw that he carried on the end of his arm.
Operate! Operate! Still time to operate! I'll take him apart! I might even put it back together!
The moment Snortius tore the top off the booth, the doc was in there. The sound of metal on flesh and the screams of the Humy echoed through all of Easton, as the town was now very much aware of the greenskin attack. The grots were now disembarking from the truck and spreading out into fire teams, looking for likely targets as the orcs finished off the Humys at the gate. Double D cackled madly as his snotlings gnawed and tore at the decapitated body of the fallen Humy. But unbeknownst to him, there was a marksman taking very careful aim. He saw the green energy surging around the grot. With no clear shot at the orcs, he found the next best target and pulled the trigger. Double D's mad cackle was cut short as the long las's blast caught him right between the eyes and burnt a neat hole all the way through the back of his head. The roiling war energy that had gathered inside the aspiring weird boy dispersed amongst the other greenskins, who were all whipped into a frothing frenzy. Snotbow, the grot commando, watched as Double D's body fell to the dusty ground. His eyes narrowed as he looked up at the tower. "That gets mine." With that, he and his crew of commando snots stalked off through the town, working their way to the central tower. Other Humies in town quickly hid inside and locked their doors, preparing to repel the attackers. The Furious finally leapt up out of the footwell and with one swift kick booted the captured Humie known as Paul from the driver's seat of the truck.
Thanks for fooling them, Yumi. Now take cover and try not to get killed, and maybe we'll have some more work for you. Let's roll! War!
With that, the Furious gunned the engine as the truck lurched forward and began thundering towards the center of town. The Furious could see Humies popping up in the windows with shotguns and las weapons as he lined up the truck to the nearest occupied building, and he floored it. The Furious cackled madly as he smashed through the wall to the sounds of Humies screaming and being crushed inside. Meanwhile, Red Shirt 5 pulled up his las gun and took aim at the Humies poking their heads out of the windows. And suddenly, he felt it. He felt the call of his ancestors, Red Shirts 1 through 4, who had given their lives before him. He had spent his life thus far as a simple blacksmith, forging metals from Big Cave into Flash Gubbins. But he couldn't run away from who he was. It was time to fulfill his destiny. He turned his las gun to full auto and began firing wildly at the Humies in the houses. Blasts landed everywhere, leaving pocked scorch marks all over. Red Shirt 5 screeched his little heart out, making sure that all eyes were on him. It was his time. Tree Climber did what he did best and climbed onto the roof of the warehouse. Following Red Shirt's example, he set his las gun to full auto. Not following Red Shirt's example, he took cover behind the peak of the warehouse roof, and instead of firing randomly, he provided cover fire for the other greenskins, trying to keep as many Humie heads down from their windows as he could. Steve, one of the first commando snots trained under Snotbow, suddenly had an idea. Instead of following Snotbow, he grabbed the hold of 2 little snotlings, Soggy and Snore Sleeper. They had been tasked with lugging around a burner and were scampering across the battlefield, looking to cause some mayhem. This gave Steve an idea.
Oi, you two! With me! With you!
Cried Soggy.
Yeah, with you!
Agreed Snore Sleeper. The 2 little snotlings followed the larger commando snot, who had grown and mutated into a grotling after many trials and tribulations. He snuck over to one of the houses, and with nimble fingers he quickly picked the lock. The snotlings grinned eagerly as Steve flung open the door, and the burner unleashed gouts of fire into the house. The Humies inside were lucky, as they were stationed in the back room away from the entrance. They were unlucky because now they were trapped in a burning building. Steve laughed maniacally as the structure burned. But as the flames spread, something caught Steve's eye. It was on the floor and the flames were creeping towards it. It was a really fancy hat. It was a mighty bicorn. Someone's father or grandfather must have been an officer back in their day. And Steve claimed the thing for his own. A lucky hat for a lucky grot. But perhaps the luckiness had not yet kicked in, for the second he placed the hat on his head, buckshot began to fly his way. One blast peppered the top of the hat with holes. Steve did not linger as he dove for the door. The second blast caught the unfortunate burner snots on their promethium tank. The subsequent blast flung Steve clear of the structure, leaving him singed and a little smoking. But Snore, Sleeper, and Soggy were completely incinerated, along with the two Humies inside of the house. The impact of the blast left Steve reeling as he slipped in and out of consciousness. Meanwhile, Red Shirt 5 was still screaming like a maniac and firing wildly. One of the shotgun-wielding Humies took careful aim after the stream of fire had passed by his window, and with one blast, Red Shirt 5 had fulfilled his destiny, as his entire torso was blown clean off. More shotgun blasts raked across the battlefield. Dr. Crumplestein stood up after mutilating the Humie in the booth, and immediately caught a blast to his shoulder, causing him to fall backwards into the remains of the booth on the back wall. As an orc, he was made of sterner stuff than the weedy grots. It was a flesh wound, but still it was a wound. Another blast like that, or a lucky one to the head or torso, and the doc would be no more.
Oh, that's smart, Humie, but this is a perfect time for me to try out me new pro-fungal cream.
The doc began to apply his remedy to his wound so he could get back to vivisecting Humies. He watched the wound begin to close up as he slathered the cream all over it.
Ah, perfect! Just what the doc ordered.
Just as he finished praising his own work, another shotgun blast tore into Crumplestein's other arm.
Oh, come on!
Snortius himself was just about to get in on the fighting as he looked for another Humie to kill. But the sniper in the tower had other ideas. The Snot Boss was moving a little too much for him to take the headshot, so he aimed for center body mass and struck Snortius right in the chest, scorching through his scrap armor. The Snot Boss staggered a bit, but he gritted his teeth and shook off the hit easily enough. Snotbo had finally reached the base of the tower containing the sniper. He started climbing the steel structure. The large tower in the center of town looked to serve both as a watch and a guard tower of some sort, as well as a communications antenna. Snotbo put his stabber between his teeth and began to climb. A little way up, the Grotling's foot slipped and clanged against the ladder. Oh, the Humie's head poked out from the sniper nest above and saw the greenskin trying to sneak up before him. Snotbo muttered a curse to himself and began to climb as quickly as he could, abandoning all pretense of stealth in the name of speed. As he climbed, he began searching for something in his cloak. It was a long shot, but if Mork was willing, Snotbo had a plan, and he just might pull this off. Orcamungus, however, roared as he swung his junk flail, sprinting towards a nearby shed. The Humie structure was relatively flimsy, and the Humie inside tried to back away from the orc, but the massive creature was too quick and hurled the head of his junk flail directly at the window of the building. The unfortunate Humie was only able to flinch before the flail tore through the wall and crushed his head in a bloody gore. Orcamungus bellowed in triumph as he yanked the flail back, tearing open the wall of the shed and revealing a second terrified Humie inside. The big chef ran forward to chop up the remaining Humie.
"I'm gonna get you, you little runt! Oh, wait, hold on! Oh, this hole ain't big enough!"
Fortunately for that Humie, the good doc couldn't quite reach him as he squeezed through the hole, granting him at least a few more moments of life. Snortius, seeing the troubles of the big chef, did not want to get stuck. Instead, he decided it was best for him to create a boss-sized entrance for himself in a different Humie house. He pressed his chain chopper to the side of a Hume building and began sawing a large door into it. When it was finished, he gave it a great kick, sending the hunk of wood flying back, causing it to smack against one of the Humes hiding in the back, and pinning the unfortunate farmer beneath it. "I'm Snottius the First, and this is my land now." Snottius menaced the farmer, stepping on the fallen section of wall. The other farmer fumbled to reload his shotgun. The snot boss grinned until he heard a metallic ping. The farmer held something in his hand. "My only regret is that I have but one life to give to the Emperor." Snotbow only had a split second to react as he covered his face from the blast. Shrapnel slammed into his armor and sliced up exposed skin. The snot boss was flung from the house and landed with a loud thud. The other greenskins paused and stared at their fallen boss. After a moment, Snottius sat up with a grunt.
What are you gits looking at? Get back to fighting!
The fight was indeed not quite finished. Snotbow was hanging on for dear life as the Hume in the tower took careful aim. Tree Climber from his perch could see the predicament that Snotbow was in.
"Hang on, Snotbow! Let me give you a shot!"
Tree Climber began to spray the tower with lasfire, hoping to distract the Hume enough to throw off his aim and give Snotbow a fighting chance. The Hume sniper ducked his head just as he fired off a round, narrowly missing Snotbow. The commando was still a sitting duck. There was no way he could make the climb in time. Snotbow grunted as he struggled to pull something free from his pocket. He still had a plan. The sniper kept his head down and lined up his final shot to finish off the greenskin. And in this moment, perhaps it was the blessing of Mork, or perhaps Gork. Perhaps Snotbow was simply that skilled in cunning. But the commando managed to pull out a small hand mirror from his cloak. The sniper's long las went off, and luck beyond luck, the blast struck the mirror, and the superheated beam of light was reflected directly back at the Hume, who was struck right in the face before tumbling off the tower. With the greatest threat to the orcs dealt with, the battle quickly began to turn. A few Humes fled into the streets, only to be devoured by hungry squigs or gunned down by the grot fire teams. Orcamungus was able to get in that last true bit of fighting as he clobbered the final armed Hume with his mighty junk flail. Snottius slowly got to his feet, bleeding from numerous shrapnel wounds, but he was alive. Gork and Mork had granted him victory again.
I claim this town in the name of Snortopia. Wah!
Cheers rose from the greenskins as they reveled in yet another victory. Their ruse had succeeded. They overwhelmed the Hume defenders with minimal losses. But while Snottius was attacking Easton, the Humes of Big Town were planning on snuffing out the fledgling Greenskin Empire. A fully loaded chimera rolled up the northern road to Megahumeopolis, the heart of Snortopian industry. Would the orcs and Gretchen left behind be able to withstand such a mighty challenge? Unfortunately, that must be a tale for another time. For Snottius knew nothing of these events. In the moment, he knew only victory. And
maybe a bit of discomfort as Doc Crumplestein painstakingly removed each sliver of shrapnel from the massive snot boss. No man do they call me. My mother and my father, and all my comrades as well. Thank you all for listening to the latest episode of Growing the Tribe. If you liked what you heard, please leave a like and a comment so that one day you may build your own glorious WA and conquer your local farming communities. If you would like to hear more stories about greenskin antics, please do consider subscribing. And if you'd like to support me, links to my Patreon, my PayPal, and my Teespring are down below in the description. And if you have absolutely no idea what's going on, you can begin the saga of Snottius from the beginning by clicking on the Growing the Tribe playlist, which should be appearing on screen right now. Thank you all once again. No Man out.